Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. I am your host, Jeremy Salinas, here to talk to you about a brand new game from IDW in conjunction with Third World Studios. We're talking today about Arcane Academy, which is a game by two well-renowned developers or designers, Eric Lang and Kevin Wilson. To help me talk to you guys about the game, I have my host with me, David Waybright.
Hello once again, everyone. Yeah, Arcane Academy is a lot of fun, I'll tell you that right up front. You have to say, though, a little inspired by Harry Potter,
Very
for
much
sure.
inspired by Harry Potter.
But with that said, the artwork and everything really makes this game its own thing.
Fantastic
for sure.
artwork.
It's a beautiful looking game.
And the design is really cool. So let's talk about the components real quick. In the game, you have a player board. It's got some pre-printed tiles on there that you'll be using to cast spells in order to complete assignments. The assignments are done by this deck of cards. In there are two different kinds of cards. There's spells, and then there's items,
right.
And those are represented by cards with red on them and then cards with blue.
Right.
Those kind of go in conjunction with your will and the shards that are there.
The will and the shards are basically the two currencies in the game.
Sure.
The shards mostly are what you're going to be collecting to build the items.
Sure.
And use those cards. And the will is what you're going to be using to cast spells.
Right.
The spells and the items make up your assignments. Once you cast 8 of those, it's going to initiate the end of the game. Everyone gets one more turn,
right?
And that's it. You just count up your points after that.
The other thing in the game are the prestige. These can be added. They're victory points. They can be added to certain cards.
Yeah, there's
in
certain
the game.
cards that bring those out and kind of boost the point value of them.
And the biggest thing in the game are the actual tiles themselves.
Yeah.
Now, as we said, there's 4 pre-printed tiles that you'll be able to utilize, but there are also several tiles that you'll be able to collect and then place on your board at the end of the round. These tiles are what really kind of pushes the gameplay along, because they not only allow you to take the ability of the tile, but sometimes they allow you to have linking abilities to the tiles around them when we use them.
You can build up some really cool chain reactions. The meat of the game is bringing those tiles to your board, and there's a little puzzle to be solved there.
Right.
How you build your board so that you can best and most efficiently use those chain reactions when you're activating your different tiles.
Right. So on your turn, you're basically doing one of two different things. You're either casting or you are resting. When you cast, you simply take an exhaustion tile, which are one of these black cubes, and you place it on any one of the tiles that doesn't have an exhaustion cube already on it. And you take that action. Now, the cool portion about this is that when you take that action, if there is a tile that is next to it. So say, for instance, I go here, and we'll talk to you about what the tiles do, but if you go to this location and there's not an exhaustion, you also get to take that because there is a link between them. And that's the puzzle aspect you were talking about. As you build out your board, you start to figure out where you want to place your tiles and try to link all those things together so that when you take one action, you could possibly also take 4, depending upon the location of that.
Exactly. And you're going to be doing that to the point where, eventually you're going to have a player board full of exhaustion.
Right.
Which is when you need to rest.
Right.
And when you rest, you're simply just removing all of the exhaustion tokens off of your player board, sort of refreshing, waking up again, and now you have all of the abilities to use again to get...
And like most other games, that timing aspect, when you decide to rest and when you decide to actually cast spells.
Right.
So there's 6 different casting actions that you can take. One of them is simply placing on one of the green tile locations. That allows you to take one of the 4 available tiles, put it on your side of the board, and be able to place it at the end of your turn, and then refresh that with one from the back. Very simple.
And those tiles, it must be said that they're not just the same tiles as the beginning. The ones that are printed on the board have some of the basic icons, but a lot of the tiles sort of mix and match a lot of the different parts, so you can kind of do a little bit of that and a little bit of this. Things that aren't capable right from the get-go.
And there's some rules for placing the tiles. You can place over some of the pre-printed ones. There's some that you can't cover up just because it'll prevent you from doing certain things in the game. And then if you place your tile over one that has an exhaustion cube already on it, you simply take that exhaustion cube and put it on top. So it allows you to, if you make a mistake planning your board out early, you can correct it by getting a better tile later on.
You don't get stuck. I mean, you can make mistakes, but it's nice because you won't get stuck with a lame board.
That's cool. I mean, that kind of gets you out of jail when you have something that's not triggering properly for you.
It still sets you back a little bit, but you can kind of climb back.
Sure. So the other 2 main actions are will and shards.
Yeah, collecting both of those currencies for sure.
So when you look at your board, some of them have a split line in them. That means that you either collect one or the other. You don't collect both. And you simply, again, place a collection. If you take a shard, you take one of the shards, put it on your side of the board. If you take a wheel, you turn up your dial one,
right,
which will allow you to cast spells in the future. Why don't you go ahead and talk to him about casting spells, because our completing assignments, which is the right word for it.
So the cards in the game, and every player's gonna start with 3, and you won't ever have more than 3 cards in your hand. There are also 4 assignments always face up on the board. So when you want to, on your turn, you can complete an assignment. So you're either taking a card out of your hand or a card immediately off the board. You have to be able to pay for that in either will or shards, and you're placing that in front of you.
Right.
Now, these cards do a number of different things. A lot of the items are going to be sort of your ongoing effects, your end-of-game scoring. There's some special abilities that can be used and triggered with another tile that we'll talk about in a minute.
Right.
And then the spells are usually one-time immediate effects.
Right.
And I found, too, the items are often, or the spells are often higher value victory
in-game points,
end-of-game points, too.
Prestige points at the end. The assignment, it's called use an item action. Some of the cards have the symbol, and we'll throw it up on the screen for you guys. Some of the cards have a use an item action. When you have that in your tableau, you simply go to that location, use the item, and then you get to use whatever is in your tableau. Typically, those things allow you to gain more shards, gain more will, affect other players, make them lose stuff.
They're particularly more powerful abilities, I think. Just
especially
because
if you get them early game, too, because some of them will even allow you to take some of these prestige tokens and add them to your items that you already have.
Right.
Sometimes placing a prestige on all the items that you currently have. So, and the last one on there is the wild card, Chaos Magic, right?
Yeah, Chaos Magic is one that comes into play. It's not on your board from the beginning, but you'll see one right here on the table. And this is basically the wild card.
Sure.
So you get to do any of the abilities just once.
Right.
You know, some other tiles that we don't have here on the table, like the currency cards, there's some in there that have, 2 shards and 2 will, not either or.
But they have no linking abilities
But
to
they
them.
have no linking abilities, so it's kind of an island all unto itself. So when you use it, you're not going to be able to efficiently use more tiles.
Sure.
So there's some give and take, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so the game's all about adjusting and trying to get the right links together. Because if you go for tiles early, which we'll kind of get into our pros and cons right now, if you go into the tiles early, which is what I really like, you can kind of focus your strategy. Either you're going to go heavy on spells, you're either going to go heavy on items. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do. It's very open-ended to kind of build your tableau however you wish.
Yeah, and there's a lot that happens in the game that kind of gently will sort of lead you in different directions. Like, you might be thinking you're going to go heavy on spells, and then all of a sudden an item comes in. In fact, I have an item here.
Either an item or a good tile that could link into something.
This item here always is, like, this comes out on the board. It's worth 10 points at the end of the game.
Right.
This is sort of that carrot that just comes out on the board, and everyone goes, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And you want to go for the Scholar's Cap. It takes 10 shards, though.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to build a pretty good engine to collect some shards.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that, that really kind of focuses your attention down that path. So you have to kind of get other things that synergize with that.
Sure, and 10 points is a lot, because typically in the games that we've played, your scoring range is going to be 15 to low 30s, maybe in that range.
Yeah,
so 10 points is a big jump.
Exactly.
30 of the points, or sometimes half of your points.
Yeah.
What pros and cons do you have?
Well, my pros, I'll start with my pros. It's a gorgeous game, first of all. We've done a lot of these games lately where the artwork really speaks to us, and this is absolutely another one. Plus, this artwork is done at an incredibly professional level.
Sure.
This is animation level artwork.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It really fits the theme really well. Aside from the artwork and components, the game itself is super fast paced. Again, in the two-player format, which a lot of those sort of spellcasting games I really like playing in the two-player format, just sort of that back and forth. It plays really well that way, and it's just really fast paced. You're collecting these tiles. The puzzle aspect of building your player board is also another thing that really scratches an itch for me.
Right.
I mean, when you make a mistake, like we said earlier, it's nice to be able to correct that. There's been some games where you kind of work yourself into a corner and you can't really do much about it, but this one allows you some ways to get out of that. So I really it's a well-balanced game. It's a fast game.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes
30
to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Two-player game, if you've played, is going to take on the low end of that for sure.
Right.
So really, there's not a lot. And on the con side of things, I really can't say too much in the con side of things.
That's a good thing, though, right?
No, I mean, I was trying to think. There's not it doesn't feel like there's any sort of runaway aspect where you feel like, okay, there's no way I'm going to win, because the game can move pretty quickly. You might have a few assignments out, and I might take a few turns where I'm boom, boom, boom with a few assignments, I'm right back in the game.
Yeah.
So really not much in the way of cons. I like the game a lot.
I agree with that. We've had some really... I took it over to one of my friends and played it, and I finished the game and had 8 cards out total. He had 4. So I would think that I would win. He actually won from the cards and the abilities he had. He had some in-game scoring, and he had a card that allowed him to take an additional turn after the end of the game. So he got to trigger a lot of things, and that kind of goes into your pro there, that it doesn't feel like the disparity in the scoring is that different.
Yeah, and I always like that, too, when there's a game-ending trigger like that. And your natural expectation is like, oh, I'm the first 8, I win, right?
Sure.
But it's not necessarily the case.
Right.
Kind of like grabbing the golden snitch in
Sure.
Quidditch and Harry Potter.
Sure.
You don't want to end the game until you maybe take a look to see what everyone else has got going on.
Yeah, I agree. The artwork and the components are really cool. The boards aren't the best in the world. They're kind of flimsy. You know?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm not a huge fan of these.
These could have been...
It's a small complaint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with that said, in terms of going with this type of card stock for a board, this is very nice. It's got that linen finish and everything on it.
Kind of a waxy feel to it as
I
well.
mean, it's really pretty. And you know what? With all of the other tiles that are getting placed on top of it, I wouldn't list that as a con for me, but certainly something to note.
My only real con in the game is what I've personally experienced is that there are a handful of cards in here that just play better with 3 or more players. Mm-hmm. There are cards in here that affect everyone at the table, that allow you to gain a larger benefit with more people playing. And there's no scaling really in the game. There's no cards that say with 3 players or 4 players take these cards or add these cards in. So when you get those cards, or even in your starting hand, they feel like dead cards sometimes, right?
Yeah, that would be the kind of thing that it would only come into a play when it really is in your starting hand, because for the most part you're able to avoid that otherwise.
Yeah, because you can buy from here as well.
Yeah, but yeah, and still, while they're slightly less powerful, they're still not completely worthless for sure.
Sure. So I dig it. I mean, I think this is a cool game. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. The artwork, like you said, is fantastic. It scales fairly well. I mean, 2-player, we played it 2-player. I played all the way to 4-player. I've enjoyed all the games that I played. So, would you suggest it?
Absolutely recommended game. If we got this at Gen Con, we played it quite a few times since. If you haven't had a chance to play this, you really should pick it up. It hasn't really gotten a ton of attention thus far since Gen Con.
Which is so weird, because both of these guys are all over the place now. I mean, they're
too many games to follow anymore.
The game market in general. There's too many freaking games out. So anyway, guys, that is Arcane Academy. Go check it out. It is a very fun game. Make sure that you guys follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to this YouTube channel that you're watching today.
Like us on Facebook, everything you can find us. Please follow us.
And we do have a contest for this game.
Yep.
We need to start announcing these here instead of on the forums.
Right.
But make sure you guys come to our Facebook page, make a comment on the Facebook page, and we will be announcing when the date of this will be going out to a winner. So check that out. Again, thanks for watching, guys, and catch us on the next Man vs. Meeple.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.